All right. We are learning about the element of design called what, everybody? Color. And so what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take one of these big sheets, and rather than me cut it, I'm going to have you guys cut it. What you're going to need to do is figure out how to not waste as much paper as possible or waste as little as possible. And so we're going to get two 11 by 11 inch squares out of this piece of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, because it's 22 inches long, so it's halfway this way. 11. Braden, will you bring me a scissor, please? So our task today is that we are going to be creating a color wheel. Say, I will create a color wheel.
I will create a color wheel.
I will mix my own secondary colors.
I will mix my own secondary colors.
Good. I will mix my own intermediate colors. Excuse me.
I will mix my own intermediate colors.
Good. So I'm first going to divide this in half. I'll get one half, and a neighbor will get another half, but it's going to end up being an 11 inch by 11 inch square. And this is going to be our color wheel. We're going to become paint mix masters. So I'm going to try, when I cut, some people are better cutters than others. I remember my mom was a really good cutter. She still is. She's a quilter. She always said, when you're cutting a line, try and cut the line in half right down the middle. So I would give this to my neighbor, and then I need to square it off because it's not a square right now, it's a rectangle. So again, what am I going to measure to? 11. So I'm just going to mark at 11 on the bottom and mark at 11 on the top. Now there's going to be some scraps. The scraps we're going to keep. These papers are located over by the sink. They're kind of in a wooden crate. I used to think it'd be really nice to have kind of a part-time person that would come in for an hour or two every day, and their job would just be to cut paper and organize paper. But then I realized, you know what? Let's have you guys do the hard work. So I'm saving these. You'll see where they go. They're kind of off to the left. This is where I'm going to make my color wheel. Today you're going to start with your primary colors, and then you're going to pick. Are you going to make your 3 oranges, your 3 violets, or are you going to make your 3 greens? So you're going to decide what you're going to do. You're going to start with three of those colors. So some people like to be really exact about their color wheel, and on a square, if you want to find the exact middle on a square, you match up the diagonals from corner to corner, and where they connect, that is the very center. I'm not going to be super exact, but I am going to draw lightly because I don't want the graphite from my pencil to mix with the light colors, especially yellow. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. You're going to end up with 12 sections. So there's 4, and I'm going to take each of these 4 sections and I'm going to divide them in thirds. Thirds. 3 times 4, everybody? 12. So you're going to make sure before you start painting that you have 12 sections so that you have the even amount. Now there's a little caddy at each table, and there's 3 primary colors. You can tell me all 3 primary colors. Red, yellow, and blue. Good. And then there's also magenta. And I don't really understand. I'm going to own that I don't understand, but for some reason magenta works better when mixing your oranges and your violets than red. You can decide which ones you're going to use. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get my primary colors in here. Make sure you leave 3 blanks in between your primary colors. It really doesn't matter to me where you put each of your primary colors. Gavin, behind you there's a little card that has some color stuff on there. Yeah, we hand that to me. So there's one of these. There's about 5 of them actually in the little blue caddy with the paints. So this is your guide. Now the pigments that were used to make this card, however this was printed, are different than the pigments in our paint. So our blue isn't going to look like that. It's going to look more of a deeper blue. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm ready to paint. I've already picked up this stuff. A lot of this stuff's by the sink. Brush, check. Water halfway full, check. 2 paper towels, got them. I'm not wearing a paint shirt. you do not have to wear a paint shirt. It says it's suggested, but it is optional. This paint does stain, so just know that. And then I've got a mess mat. So I've got all my stuff ready to go. These trays you'll actually be probably sharing, and since you're the last group of the day, you guys are my lucky ones that get to clean the trays. My first group gets them ready for you, the second group uses them, and the third one gets to clean them all up. So, is that okay, Kayla?
Yep.
All right.
Perfect.
So on this color wheel, yellow's at the top, but I wouldn't necessarily need to put it at the top. I just need to make sure I leave how many blank in between my next primary? 3. Lindsay, what am I at for time so far?
5:40.
5:40? All right, pretty good. Now, I never really, as much as we here at Middle School East believe in trustworthiness, I never really trust the person before me to have cleaned the brush really well. So I like to clean it along the bottom of the bucket and then get the extra water out on the side. Don't drum with this because it's gonna get your neighbor's face wet. Did you feel that a little bit? Good. All right, so it's clean, it's dry, and I'm just gonna start with blue. So you're gonna first put your 3 primaries in. We're gonna be using this color wheel for a project. We're gonna actually be cutting it up, but we're gonna first start by making our color wheel. Nice, even. I'm gonna go all the way to the edges, practice brush control. I'm not gonna fill my whole color wheel. I'm just gonna show you how to get started. Sometimes I'll let this dry and come back and give it another coat so that it really covers the paper. All right, now I'm gonna leave 3 blank, and I can either put red here or what other color? Yellow. Now I'm gonna try and we wanna preserve as much paint as we can, and I definitely don't wanna contaminate that yellow. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to my water here, and I'm gonna clean my brush. And I'm gonna dry it, and this is important. We wanna make sure that there's no blue showing up because otherwise I'm gonna contaminate the yellow. Today, while I have you guys watching, I'm gonna do my 3 greens. I'm gonna do yellow green, green, and blue green. Now when you're mixing colors, you can go back and forth amongst the greens, but you're never gonna be able to go back all the way to yellow unless you completely clean your brush and dry your brush. So it's been since 3rd hour since people have used these paints, so they've started to dry out a little bit. So if you notice, I'm stirring up the edges in these containers. We can always put more paint in here, but it's hard to get it back into those tubs. So 1, 2, 3. All right, here's my yellow. Now, if you wrote really hard with your pencil, you're gonna notice that when you go to paint up to the edges, that it might pull some of the graphite into the yellow and it kind of makes it look dirty. So draw lightly. Good thing I've got a mess mat. All right, so now I've got my yellow. Remember, we're gonna start with the primaries. I'm gonna skip red and I'm gonna go into mixing my greens. I'm out of yellow though. I don't really have a whole lot of yellow here. So Ben, will you hand me more yellow? Showed this to the last group. It took 1 minute and I look over and there is a student who's taking this brand new huge thing and going, "Argh!" Paint's going outside, it's going everywhere. So please, just fill the bottoms of these. A nickel-sized amount. You do not need to fill them. It wastes paint. You can always get more. So I didn't fill the whole thing up. I just kind of covered the bottom. And then try and keep the top of these clean so that they don't get little crusties on it. That can get put away again, Ben. All right, so I'm gonna start with yellow green, then blue green. I'm gonna scoop out a good sized chunk of yellow. Yellow's the weakling up between the 3 primaries, so you're always gonna need a little bit more. And could I get the blue, please, sir? So I'm gonna slowly introduce a tiny bit of blue to the yellow. For first my yellow green, then my regular green, and then my blue green. Now regular green is what type of color? It's a cool, but what else is it, you guys? It's not a primary, it is a secondary. Good. But yellow green and blue green are something called intermediate colors. Clean and dry. All right, I'm going to take the tiniest amount of blue and I'm going to add this to my yellow. And that is an intermediate color called what? Yellow-green. Now typically, whether you're working on a color wheel or you're working on your own painting, usually you're not going to want to paint next to an area that's wet because they will bleed together. Okay, so there is my yellow-green. Anybody have questions so far? Can I take my brush and scoop out more blue right now?
No.
Nope, you're gonna get really good at cleaning and drying your brush so that you're not contaminating your original primary colors. So I'm gonna add a little bit more, about the same amount as I added before. And we're looking for a nice medium green, Kermit the Frog green, or what's called Kelly green. So sometimes fifth graders are like, oh man, I'm painting and it's not really coating my paper. Well, make more green. Clean your brush, dry your brush, make some more green. Get good at making more green. We can always add to these trays. We can't take paint out. So I'm running out of green, not a big deal. Get good at making more colors. So I'm actually gonna scoop up some more yellow. Bring that over
Would
here.
you put yellow, because yellow, wait, blue and yellow make green, right?
Yep, I'm making my 3 greens right now.
If you make your green runs out, could you just squirt a little bit of yellow in? And
Could
then
you
squirt
squirt yellow right into there?
Yeah, and then squirt a little bit of blue.
Yes, but please, please, please be careful not to squirt and fill up the whole thing. So now I'm going to take a pretty substantial scoop of blue. I've got a really dark green called blue green.
So if you were going to squirt it, would you just put a drop in?
Yeah, and you're gonna get pretty good at figuring out how much to squirt in. But the idea is that at the end of the class period, we're not washing our trays and literally putting all the paint right down, literally down the drain. So I've been talking, you've been listening. If you are going to work, I would suggest starting with your greens today because that's what I did. But if you want to try starting with your oranges, remember this will be red, but you might practice mixing with magenta, and so you'll take yellow, a tiny bit of magenta, that'll be your yellow orange, a little bit more magenta, that'll be your regular orange, and a little bit more, and that'll be your red orange. It's up to you. Questions? At the end today, you're going to be putting your name someplace easy to read, and you're actually going to be storing these in your cubbies vertically. One person's going to put it on the left hand side of their cubby, one's going to put it on the right hand. And if you have a third person in here, you're going to be putting your third person will put theirs in their cubby this way. We good?
Yep.
Okay, you're going to cut them yourself. There's some that are already half cut. Thank you very much, Lindsay. You guys paint neatly. Thank you very much. You can go ahead and hit the red button.